You know, it's slightly embarrassing to know the fact that a film from 1924 is better than one from 2016. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to this review of the 1924 Buster Keaton silent film Sherlock Jr, which by the way hasn't really got anything to do with Sherlock Holmes. It's just that there's a character in the film played by Buster Keaton who calls himself Sherlock Jr, probably because he wants to sound like Sherlock Holmes, but he isn't really Sherlock Holmes, so he's calling himself Sherlock Jr. There isn't really an explanation why he calls himself Sherlock Jr, but at least we know why the film is called Sherlock Jr. So, the plot of the film is about a cinema/movie theatre projector man/cleaner he's studying to become a detective, and he wants to become a detective. And he's trying to win the affections of this girl. So, he's trying to get money to buy some chocolates, however, he doesn't have enough for the one he wants, so he has to get one that's slightly cheaper. And then he goes off to give them to his girlfriend. However, there's another guy who is a rival suitor, if you will, and he steals the girl's father's pocket watch from his coat and goes off and sells it for about, I think it's $4. The chocolates cost $1, and the other guy, the main character, was trying to get was free, and he only had two, and then he found one, but then he had to give it to someone who said she'd lost it. And then another woman claimed she'd lost one, so he gave her one of the other dollars, and he just had to use his only one left to buy the cheaper box. And then he made it look like that was a $4 box, and guess what? The rival sells the pocket watch for $4, so he can get the $3 chocolate box set to give it to the girl. Some hilarious antics occur, and then the father finds his pocket watch has been stolen, so our protagonist decides to become a detective, search everyone to try and find out any clues. However, his rival has snuck the receipt into our protagonist's coat, so everyone but him is clean. So when he's checked, they find the receipt and he's blamed, and pretty much, as well as also the fact that he wrote $4 on the chocolate box. So therefore he is kicked out of the house, basically. So, not very happy for him. So he goes back to work. He tries to shadow his rival to see if he may have been behind all it. Although I'm not sure how he probably would have thought that without knowing anything. So afterwards he then goes back to after failing in the shadowing bit. There's a very funny bit with a train. And he goes back to his projector room job and kind of goes to sleep whilst projecting the film. Meanwhile, the girl goes to the pawn shop to identify the person who sold the watch, and the shop owner points out the rival when he's walking past. Meanwhile, our protagonist is having a dream. He's dreaming that he is a famous detective called Sherlock Jr, and that he has to solve a case of some missing pearls of a rich man. So he has to. His suspects are the man, his daughter, a suitor, and the butler. And the butler and the suitor are in it together. They're stealing the jewellery behind the father and girl's back. This is the dream one. So they try to kill Sherlock Jr. in a way with exploding snooker balls in the most tension-built pool game, and also with a poisonous drink and a axe kind of chopping down the chair. This is a 1924 silent film. There's going to be lots of slapstick comedy and really brilliantly well stunt work by these guys. especially Buster Keaton himself, who's also directing the film. So then Sherlock Jr. decides to shadow the rival, and eventually he finds out it was him who stole the pearls. This is still Dreamland, by the way. And so he tries to stop him, and also the butler had kidnapped the girl, and so Sherlock Jr. and his assistant, who resembles the theatre worker in the real world, they have to rescue the girl and get back to Jules. But eventually they end up in the lake, and he just wakes up after that. The lake, the water fountain, Sherlock Jr. gets wet a lot. And there's very funny moments throughout the film. This is a comedy after all. I think most silent films were comedies back in the day. Especially the longer silent films with slapstick comedy, like Charlie Chaplin ones. And then towards the end, in the real world, the girl comes back to visit the protagonist and says that they've made a mistake, they're sorry, and he takes notes from a film playing on how to proceed with the romantic gestures, even though the girl is paying little attention at this point in time. Maybe she's slightly embarrassed and nervous that they won't get back together. But in the end, they get back together, and it's actually left a little bit. It's left slightly open whether they've gotten back together or not, but it's probably very likely they have. It's not made very clear. And now, I did mention in my Absolutely Fabulous, the movie review, that I had a slight problem with the ending, and it's not really the fact that the relationship is still, whether it is still on is made unclear. No, it's really the fact that it's how the ending becomes. It's basically, most of the film is the Sherlock Jr. dream, and that pretty much ends with someone in a lake. That's okay, I don't mind that, because I've seen cartoons where characters just wake up while something happens in a dream, and the story of the dream doesn't quite feel finished. No, I don't mind that. It's the fact that what's happening in the real world whilst he's dreaming, the girl is finding out everything. So really, the guy was not finding it out for himself. He's pretty much failed earlier on, and then he dreams about him being a detective. So that, whilst he's trying to solve the mystery in the dream world, he doesn't really do anything detective-y in the real world besides searching people and following one person. And then he just goes to sleep and has a dream about being a great detective. So, yeah, call him a great detective. Ha, that's a laugh. It's actually the girl who actually does stuff, and in the end, it's only a few scenes, and we don't really see what happens in between. We don't see her going to see her father about it. We don't see whether the suitor gets his comeuppance, or whether he has to pay the money back or anything. And like I said, the relationship is still open-ended. He does give her a ring to say earlier on, an engagement ring, and then he gives it back. She gives it back, and when she thinks he's stolen the pocket watch, but then he gives it to her back afterwards, and she kind of accepts it, I suppose. But I don't know, it's just events leading up to the ending just didn't quite work out, because most of the detective stuff was in the dream, or by the girl, and other stuff in the real world just didn't make it that great. So I think the closest it gets to being right, getting the ending right, is the fact that the girl realised the mistake and came back to him. I think that's probably the closest to a satisfying ending, as well as the fact that they may be back together. I'm not sure. It's still, like I said, it's still open whether they are or not. He is a bit nervous about the idea of having children, as seen at the end. That was a funny moment. But overall, this is besides the structure of some parts of the film and the ending being a bit questionable in some places, it is still a really fun film and really well shot and executed. And Buster Keaton and other actors, they do really great stunts. They are great. Well, I'll say this for the silent film actors of the day. They not only were they great silent performers, they were also great stuntmen at the same time, and probably stunt women for the women if they did any. And it just pulls up really well. And the snooker scene is brilliant. I loved the snooker scene. I even did it for my university work. Had to watch this film for a piece of university work, and I chose the snooker scene at 28 minutes 41, the Pacific frame, and that whole scene, which is about just after halfway through, the film's about 44 minutes. I'll put a link down below if I remember. So it's after halfway. Halfway is about 22 minutes. So it's the second half, and it's brilliant. It's such a great scene. I loved it. Although I am wondering why Sherlock Jr. just decides to join a game of pool whilst investigating. However, maybe he knows that someone's trying to get him, even though he doesn't know who the thief are, and thief or thieves are, or where the jewels are. Because in the next scene, after this pool scene, caption says he's worked out everything apart from where the pearls are and who the thieves were, which he finds out later on. But he's probably had his suspicions anyway. So he might have his suspicions, but he doesn't know just yet. But he may also be aware that they might be trying to kill him, or at least distract him. But he plays the game anyway, and to be honest, I am actually kind of glad he does play the game, because it is such a great scene. There doesn't need to be any stunts required, there doesn't need to be much talking, it's just a guy playing pool, and one of those balls is a bomb. The tension the tension in the scene writes itself. It is so good. And it's not even that long. It's not a very long scene. There isn't a huge amount of tension, but it's still shown really well. I really loved how they did it. It wasn't even that much tension. It was just there. The fact it was there and how it was executed, that was enough. And that was performed really well. And I think everyone does a great performance. Of course, nobody speaks. It's a silent film after all. But they definitely do great body language and facial expressions, especially Buster Keaton himself. And they all do brilliant jobs, and it's all good. I do have to say, captions do come up at some strange points, like just before or during people are talking, so when it kind of cuts from a scene, if it was at the bottom of the screen, like on a subtitle, that probably makes a bit more sense. But this is how they did them in the old days. Can't really complain about that. It's just a slight nitpick, but it's nothing that would discredit the film. I think this film is brilliant. So, in the end, I am going to give Sherlock Jr. a 9 out of 10. It is slightly let down by the fact that we don't really see the protagonist actually do any proper detective work after shadowing the guy, and it's really the girl who has to sort it all out, and then the ending isn't completely amazingly done, because it's just the girl turning up and saying that maybe they've made a mistake, but the relationship isn't quite certain, and nor did the protagonist actually show it, actually put his detective works to good use after the shadowing of the guy, and he's just had a dream about being somebody else who is a really good detective, and even then that dream kind of just stops as well. So yeah, but the acting and stunt performances by the actors and actresses, they do a really great job, and as does the comedy. That's really great. The cinematography is great. And need I remind you of the snooker scene, the pool scene? Amazing. It's just a simple pool scene, some great cinematography, and some great tension. So yeah, that's great. So those bits make up for a slightly disappointing, not slightly disappointing, but slightly quite completely satisfying ending. It's a nice ending, but it's not completely satisfying. But it's still a very good ending. Well, a good ending anyway. But the film itself is brilliant, so I urge you to check it out. If I have remembered to link it below, go watch it. It's 44 minutes, so it's only 3/4 of an hour, and yeah, it's really good, really funny. So that's it from Sherlock Jr. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to this review of the 1924 Hang on, did I say that right? And they're really, in probably the most tension-built pool game, in the pool game with the but it's nothing that would it would, you know, it's like, bastard. I was hoping to get it in quickly. You know, it's slightly embarrassing to believe